This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to another edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. Logan is the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. Serving you in Southern California, Logan has a couple of convenient offices, one in Hemet, one in Redlands, and stands ready to help you get to and through retirement. My name's Ron Stutz. Always have the pleasure of working with Logan on this show every week. And Logan, how you been? How's your week?
I tell you what, Ron, it's going great. I think I'm going to make it through the rest of the week and looking forward to closing it out strong.
Yeah, we have a lot of good things to talk about today, but the first thing I want to do is put your phone number out there for folks who can get a discovery meeting, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call. If you'd like to get one, it's free. There's no obligation. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to get in touch. Got to start off this week with kind of a fun fact, Logan, and this is actually kind of funny. Out of the nearly 200 countries in the world, only 22 of them have never experienced a British invasion.
The British have not been messing around all these years, right?
That's right, exactly.
That's what that stat tells me.
Well, we experienced a British invasion back in the 60s, as far as music is concerned.
Yeah.
You know.
A good one. That was a good one, right?
Exactly. Great one. And that's a different thing altogether. Well, let's talk about retirement planning with George Bernard Shaw, famous playwright. Mm-hmm. And he had some interesting quotes over the years, and some I think could be applied pretty easily to financial matters. Mm-hmm. What can we learn about financial planning from these quotes from the great playwright George Bernard Shaw? He once said, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think sometimes people get stuck in a particular financial habit or maybe even a belief and simply can't or won't change their behavior or change their mind. And I've seen that happen a few different ways. You know, I actually had a conversation a few weeks ago that's coming to mind with a client who was around 65 years old, and it was funny because he had done well, worked hard, like a lot of our clients have. They've worked hard the last 20 or 30 years plus, and he had around $800,000 in retirement assets and savings, and was getting at that point where it was time to pull the plug and retire. And it was funny because he had been a client of ours for a little while already before that. And it was funny because he was one of those that said, you know what, I'll never look at annuities, right? I never wanted an annuity. Yeah. I don't see why they would ever make sense, right? Which in a lot of cases can be a proper verbiage, right? But in this instance, we were talking, and he was like, Logan, with the market volatility going on and where I'm at in life, I just kind of want something with a little bit of my money that's going to generate, some safety and some income. Yeah. And I was like, well, let's call him Rick, for example, right? I said, well, Rick, for example, right? I mean, what you're saying is you want to put away a portion of some money. You want to generate some guaranteed income that's going to last for you and your wife's life, and, might have a decent rate of return on it, depending on where we put it. And he goes, well, yeah, that sounds about right. And I go, well, how about if we put, in his case, I think we put somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 in an annuity for him for income purposes. Mm-hmm. And again, that still left him a lot of money outside of the annuity, because I don't think all of your money should be in these types of investments, but they can be a good spot for a portion of it. And in his case, I was able to generate him somewhere between, $20,000 or $25,000 a year of cash flow, right? And so it was funny because now it was able to help his behavior a little bit with our money we left in the stock market, right? We were able to manage that a little more freely, not have to worry as much about the ups and downs because we know we have the cash flow coming. Right. So in that case, right, it was one of those where it was like, well, he told me a few months after that, he goes, all right, finally you changed my mind, right? It does work out. And I think the biggest thing is not talking annuities or stocks or bonds or any of that stuff, but I think just in general, when it comes down to financial planning and retirement planning, there's a lot of different tools and solutions and strategies that you kind of have to keep an open mind with and understand there might be different times when might be a good time to employ one of those strategies.
Well, one thing is that there are different kinds of annuities, and a lot of people have a negative impression of annuities because of variable annuities primarily. Yeah. And I'm sure that you didn't put that money into a variable annuity. So.
No, it did not. No, on that one specifically was a fixed index annuity that was really just, again, they could be used for many different reasons, but this one was generally for just good lifetime cash flow.
Yeah. Here's another quote from George Bernard Shaw. He says, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." Do you believe that?
I do, right? I think me and you've had a few conversations on the show and maybe even off the show about this where, some people that retire and immediately start having the most fun of their lives, right? And I always explain it as the client I never can get a hold of, right? When they retire, they're out there. They're with their grandkids. They're doing their sports, their activities, whatever it is. They're very, very involved. And then there's the other side of people who retire and immediately start to decline because a lot of them they have a difficult time transitioning to life without work, right? And so they don't know how to play anymore, right? So one of the things I would say is it's very important. Like I have some clients I was just thinking of right now while I was talking about that where one of them, he's like so involved in his grandkids' sports. He takes them to every baseball practice, he volunteers. He is all about the grandkids. He is full in. He watches them, picks them up from school, involved in, like I said, sports, school activities, all of that. That is his now new passion, right? Yeah. I have other clients who, some of them don't even have kids or grandkids, and maybe they're travel. Maybe they're really involved in volunteering or whatever it is. And I do tend to see most of our clients that have been with us, since the mid-90s or so, that are now up in their mid-90s or so, have the ones that have, had that successful and I would say, fulfillment retirement, I'll call it, is they've stayed very, very active.
Yeah. And Tom Petty once said, musically speaking, "I don't know, but I've been told, never slow down, never grow old."
Yep. Great song.
That's what happens with a lot of people. Here's another saying from George Bernard Shaw: "Beware of false knowledge. It is more dangerous than ignorance." And boy, there's a lot of misinformation out there these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mark Twain had that a very famous quote, or very similar to that, and I might be butchering this a little bit, right? But I think it said something like, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble, but it's what you know for sure that just ain't so," right? So
that's right.
Something like that, right? And so, basically speaking, there's a lot of bad financial decisions that are out there that people can make, and a lot of the times we don't make those decisions going, "This is a bad decision, I'm going to go ahead and make it," right? We make it because we thought at one point it might have been a good decision. And so it's important. I always tell people, that's why I go to lots of these educational classes and seminars and advisor conventions all the time, because things change so much, and it's important to understand, what's out there. And that's what I always tell our clients. That's our job, is to continuously make sure we're educating you and giving you that, the most up-to-date and really most current information, because it's important to understand things change and we don't always know everything, right, as people, but it's important to understand that sometimes you don't have to say you know everything, right? Sometimes you work with a professional like us or others like in, estate planning or taxes or whatever it is. And there's a lot of bad decisions I've seen made out there, Ron. I mean, to name one I was thinking of, where one of the things I see most common is many of us out there will retire, right? And we don't realize how big of a decision that is, right? We say, well, maybe I have some money in a 401k, maybe I have some Social Security, might have a small pension, and hey, maybe the spouse has a little bit of money in a Roth IRA, right, for example.
Yeah.
And, that all sounds great, but the problem is a lot of it comes down to we haven't really even done a structured income plan about, okay, if we have all these assets, maybe Social Security is $30,000 or $40,000 a year, depending on our age. Maybe off our investments, we could draw maybe only 4 or 5% off of that. So maybe it's only, another $20,000, $30,000 a year. So, I mean, that's $50,000, $60,000 a year. Is that enough to live off of? Or are you going to have to take more out of your portfolio, which then obviously, as we know, means our returns would have to go up. But if our returns didn't go up, would we run the risk of running out of money faster, right? So there's so many of these big decisions that have to be made. And I think it's super important to kind of make sure you're not just ignoring some of these conversations or ignoring some of these decisions and having those conversations beforehand.
So important to actually have a plan and to know and not think, not suppose that I have this or that. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to tell you how you can get in touch with Logan Sadler and talk about all this kind of stuff as relates to your financial situation in just a moment here on the Financial Beat. But that's coming up in just a couple of minutes. The possibilities are numerous once we decide to act and not react. And I guess that's all about being aggressive and not defensive if you're in the boxing ring. But the same thing is in the financial world.
Yeah, no, great point. I mean, I think when it comes to making financial decisions in life, so many people are inclined to react instead of being proactive, right?
Yeah.
So I think we could all accuse ourselves of that in some form.
That's what I was trying to say, by the way.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. I'm sure some of the viewers did. But a lot of people out there will stay at a job maybe where they're miserable, right? Instead of seeking out a new job or starting a business or whatever it is. And in other cases, maybe it's their investments, maybe it's making their investments more conservative as they age. They'll wait for the market crash, then we're going to panic, right? And then we make the decisions maybe at not the best time. And then same with tax implications, right? Instead of doing tax planning and really looking in advance to what might come down the road, we might just complain down the road that we're paying too much in taxes, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we can kind of go over this many different ways, but it's so important to be more proactive, like you were saying, about your decisions. And, one of the main goals we always say of this show, Ron, is me and you do, we try our best, right? We try to do a great job to bring you guys some great tips and tricks and some value here as far as retirement planning and some general education. And of course, we try to throw in a few jokes here and there, right, to keep me and you sane, but also some of the listeners.
Yeah.
But really, the main goal of this show is we know a lot of you out there have maybe worked 20 or 30 years hard at this job and are maybe getting close to or just starting retirement. And there's a lot of different important decisions that are going to come up, right? What do I do with my 401k? That took me 30 years to build. What am I supposed to do with it? When it comes to Social Security, when's the best way to take it? What time is the right time to take it for me and my spouse? When you look at things like, you look at things like Medicare, you look at things like estate planning. There's so many of these big decisions that are coming along down the road, and you want to make sure you have a firm or a team that's going to be there to help you make those decisions and making sure you make the right decisions that are a good fit for you throughout your retirement. And that's exactly what we offer when you come in for that discovery meeting. It's a good time to sit down in our office or via Zoom and, again, meet me and the team and see if we're a good fit to be the ones to help make those decisions with you and help you transition to and through retirement.
No matter what kind of condition you're in, financially speaking, you can improve it just by knowing what's going on and what to do in order to make your situation a little better. And that's where Logan Sadler comes in. He's the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial in Southern California. Wherever you are, call this number and you can get a discovery meeting going. That is a getting to know you session that is cost-free and obligation-free. The number to call is 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-7526. Write down that number if you haven't already, but go ahead and call right now if you like and leave your name and your number. You'll get a call back from the good folks at Regary Financial, and then you'll be on your way. You'll be glad you made that call. 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler, of course, is the VP and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial, and he'll be right back with more coming up in just a moment. You're listening to The Financial Beat.
Are you worried about how taxes might impact your retirement savings? Don't let taxes derail your financial future. Download Logan Sadler's 2023 Guide to Tax Planning and learn how to optimize your Social Security, retirement savings, and investments. With expert advice, the latest tax laws, and strategies for tax optimization, you'll be on the path to maximizing your retirement savings. Just text the word ADVICE to the number 21000 and start taking control of your financial future. Just text ADVICE to 21000 and download your free copy of the 2023 edition Guide to Tax Planning.
It's getting to know you time.
You're listening to The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Regary Financial. And Logan, it's time to get to know you a little bit better. And I know that there are people out there who are just dying to do that. And I got a question for you here. You might think it's kind of silly, but it may be revealing at the same time. What was your favorite grade in school?
That's a great question. I've actually had this conversation recently.
Really?
I would say my two favorite grades, if I had to pick two of them, would be, I think, fifth grade, because you're kind of when I went to school, you were like the top of the food chain there, and at the end of fifth grade before junior high. And then I would say, and you had no worries in fifth grade, right? Sure. And then I would say 10th grade. And why I say 10th grade is because you've already got a year of high school under your belt. And the nice part about about that is you already have your friends established at that school. You already kind of got a routine. And the problem with later on in high school is obviously it's kind of time to make a decision, right? Everyone's expecting you to do something with your life senior year, get ready for college and all that other stuff. So lots of pressure. I would say 5th and 10th grade were just a really great time to enjoy it and have a good time with friends and sports and everything that comes along with that.
Gosh, I can believe you were having a conversation about that earlier because you obviously put a lot of thought into that.
I did. I really did. It was funny. I was having that conversation with a friend, and that's why I told him, man, 10th grade was great because no expectations, just go to school, have fun, play sports, and didn't have to worry about too much at that point.
Oh, my goodness. Well, now we all know Logan Sadler a little bit better, what he was like in 5th grade and what he was like in 10th grade. And
little insight.
You really need to know what he's like right now. And you can call Regary Financial and get a conversation going. It's not going to cost you anything. We'll pass along that number to you in just a few minutes here. You're listening to The Financial Beat.
We all know Congress has approved trillions of dollars in spending the past year. It's all on top of the tens of trillions of dollars of debt our nation already owes. Yet we're living with some of the lowest tax rates in history. Now, how long do you think that's going to last? Learn how you can prepare for future tax implications by watching Logan Sadler of Regary Financial's exclusive webinar, How Tax Planning Changes Through the 4 Stages of Retirement. Just text the word advice to the number 21,000, and we'll text you back a link to the webinar right away. Text advice to 21,000 and make sure you don't have to pay a cent more in taxes than you have to. To access the free webinar right now, text advice to 21,000.
Don't you want to see sharp and not be flat in retirement? This is the Financial Beat.
We're back now with more of the Financial Beat. I'm Ron Stutz. He's Logan Sadler. And Logan Sadler, of course, represents Regary Financial. He's been doing this for quite some time. And Regary Financial has been around for a very long time. Many of the clients of Regary Financial have been with the firm for more than a quarter of a century. And Logan works with 3 different generations of client families. They also have great partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, and even Medicare specialists to help offer you well-rounded guidance in all things financial for their clients. And if you would like to have a conversation with Logan Sadler, he's not going to put you off on anybody else. You're actually going to be able to call this number and leave your information. You'll get a call back, and you can set a time to have a conversation with Logan Sadler. That's not going to cost you a penny. There's no obligation involved either. The number to call is 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. We call it a discovery meeting. You discover things about him. He discovers things about you. You get some answers to your questions that you might have, and maybe some answers to questions you didn't even know needed to be asked. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make that happen. Earlier this week, I read something, Logan, and it's a quote from Max Asness. I have no idea who Max Asness is. Maybe it was Max Yasgur who had the farm where they had Woodstock, but I don't know who Max Asness is or was, but he said something that I thought you'd appreciate. Money is something you got to make in case you don't die. And nobody wants to run out of money before they die, right?
Yeah, that does kind of make sense, right? Because we really don't need any money if we're going to if we're passing away tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But if we're going to live another 5 days, we might need 5 days worth of money. If we're going to live another 5 years, we might need 5 years worth of money. So I guess he's on to something there. I think I kind of agree with that quote in a weird way.
Yeah. I think that's good news that we all need to keep in mind, but let's talk about good news and bad news. You know, oftentimes, people say, do you want to have the good news first or the bad news? But
what type of guy are you, Ron? You like the good news first or the bad news?
Well, I like to hear the good news,
Yeah.
But I want you to explain why the good news in these statements might not exactly be good enough to offset the bad news that follows. As most people prefer, we'll give you the bad news first. Do most people prefer that? I don't know. Give me the bad news.
I don't know. I personally like the bad news first because then after that, there's something to look forward to, right? Yeah. But if you get it the other way, there's nothing to look forward to, just bad news.
It's going to get better, I guess. Well, here's another one. The bad news is that you still have a lot of debt, but the good news is that some of the interest you're paying is tax deductible. What nonsense.
My favorite thing, right, is when CPAs say, it's a tax write-off, right? But you guys still got to have the money, right? So it's always great to have write-offs and deductions, but you still got to have the money. So and to answer that question, I'd say there is, in some cases, Ron, that is true, right? I have some of our higher net worth clients where maybe they have very high assets and they have a lot of income, And you know what? It makes sense maybe, for example, not to pay off their home because they might get the mortgage deduction, right? And they have the income so that the paying the mortgage isn't hurting them. Maybe their mortgage is $2,000 a month, their income's $10,000 a month. Like they're going to be okay, right? Their living expenses will still be covered, and they get the tax deduction. So it does make a lot of sense. There's some other clients where we deal with where maybe their income's going to be $5,000 a month in retirement, and their mortgage is $2,000 a month, right? That leaves something a little bit tighter when you're looking at budgeting and things like that, and it might not make sense to keep that tax deduction, right? So you always want to look at things from different lenses because that's why we always say it depends on your situation, right? I know people might get irritated by hearing me say that a million times on the show, but it is something so true because I've seen the same situation unfold many different times, and it's sometimes a very different answer, right? It depends on what it comes down to. But in that situation, I would say that is some good news in a way, right? Having some deductible tax deductions, but in some cases, it might not be worth it just depending on your situation.
Okay, let's say you hear this from somebody. The bad news is that this mutual fund hasn't performed very well, but the good news is that the fees are low.
Well, it is nice to have low fees, right? I think we could all agree.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a low fee, but I think we could all agree that, hey, you know what, Ron, if maybe if you had a mutual fund that had a 0.5% cost, but it made 2%, or you had a 1% cost and it made 6%, I think we'd probably still rather pay the fee, right, to get the higher return in some cases. So low fees are great. I'm all about low fees. If you could have the lowest fees possible and still get the most amount of value and bang for your buck, that's obviously the goal. Mm-hmm. But just because if you're losing money in an investment consistently, and maybe it's just a bad fund, because one thing I always tell people is, there's a million different S&P 500 mutual funds, for example. They are not all the same, right? Some of them might have lower fees, some might have higher fees, and some of them actually, believe it or not, people are shocked, but they actually have different performance. I've ran multiple reports for clients where, I'll say, hey, if you came over to us, here's the investment choices we're going to make. Here's how we're going to break down your plan, and we go into all the other stuff. But one of the things they'll focus on is, well, I could just buy the S&P myself, or I could just do this, right? And well, yeah, some cases you can for sure. But one thing is for sure is that not all of these funds are the same. So I think it's important to kind of look through, what types of costs there are, but also what's the overall return and what type of bang for my buck am I getting.
A lot of folks run into this situation late in life, and you may hear someone say, if you have a financial advisor who's not very good for you, the bad news is that you don't have enough money to pay for your nursing home care. But hey, the good news is that Medicaid is going to step in. That's not much of a consolation, is it?
No, because I always tell people basically, not in all cases, but basically what that means, Ron, is we are out of money, right?
No money.
It means you had $500,000 when you retired, and now you got to basically deplete that. And then basically when it goes to zero or close to it, they say, you know what, hey, Medicare will step in and help you out, right, or Medicaid. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it needs to be more planning. I always tell people when we're looking at an investment and a retirement plan all in one, there's so many decisions. One of the first things that people come into our office and, they come in for the discovery meeting and we sit down and we start talking, they'll go, hey, Logan, what types of returns can you get? Or what type of mutual funds do you use? Or what type of stocks do you use? Or do you like annuities, right? They'll focus on those things, which are all great questions. Those are all important. But I think looking broad scope at the plan, hey, are we looking at long-term care, right? Maybe you have $1 million saved, maybe you have $200,000 saved, or whatever your circumstance is, and we're looking at, how are we going to cover long-term care? What is our game plan for that, right? Then we're looking at, the annuities or mutual funds or stocks or all these other things, but really creating that roadmap of what our retirement's going to look like and what obstacles could pop up and how we're going to solve for them.
Another thing I was just thinking about is if you're in a situation where you have no money and Medicaid steps in, the quality of care that you get is probably not going to be as good as you would like.
Not ideal, right? For most of us going in that situation, we'd like to pick, or we'd like at least our family, whoever we choose to make that decision, to be able to pick somewhere a little nicer than maybe some of those places we don't have a choice on.
Yeah. You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and we're talking about good news and bad news. Hey, Logan, the bad news is your portfolio just lost 40%. But the good news is that it'll come back eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make me feel any better.
No, it doesn't. I've obviously being an advisor at our firm, been around for a while, we've had conversations, right? So I know that, markets go up or down. I mean, that is what it is, right? But there's a lot of planning and strategies that could be done ahead of time. And I always tell people, we always use that storm analogy, right? When the storm's coming, you don't board up your windows after the storm's passed, right? You want to do it before the storm gets there. And so I always tell people it's very important. If you're 30 years old and your account's down probably 20 or 30% right now while you're listening to this, for example, you're probably going to be okay, right? The statistics show that you have a good chance of being okay. The statistics do not show that same type of result. If this is your first year of retirement and your account's down, I'm not saying it is, but if your account went down 40% like this example, well, you might be talking a whole different thing. You might not be able to continue as is in your retirement, right? So I always ask people, what type of return are you willing to get, or what type of risk are you willing to get the return you need, right? What are you willing to risk to get that? Are you willing to risk taking a lot less income in retirement, not passing on as much assets you had planned for, maybe running out of money faster? I mean, what is it worth? And so it's important to understand that risk is not a bad thing, but we want to understand how much risk are we acceptable to for our portfolio and our income plan to still be able to live out, these next 30 years plus maybe in our retirement. And I think that's more of what the conversation needs to be centered around. And go ahead, Ron.
I was just going to say, late in life, you don't have time for things to recover like you would if you're in your 30s or whatever the case may be. Totally different situation.
No, you're 100% right, because there's lots of different market research and things like that out there with like sequence of return risk, where if we have really, really deep downturns, in the first few years of retirement, it can drastically change, how much money we have left or how much money we were able to draw for income, or again, when we run out of money. So I think it's important to understand. We always say what got you to retirement, right, doesn't always get you through retirement. So it's important to understand that you're in those changing of the tides, and that shift of mindset needs to come in, because there's a lot of different risk and opportunities that can come up that you need to be aware of. And a lot of the clients that tend to come on board with our team, Ron, they're typically, they're looking for someone that has the tools, the resources, the solutions to be able to put together that comprehensive plan to help them go through this changing of tides. Because we understand a lot of you listening to this, you don't retire every day, right? But we do help people retire every day. And our firm's been around a long time helping people get to and through retirement and building out strategies that are built to last for that 20 or 30 years. And I think that's why it's always important to not put things off too long, right? We always say, we'll call Logan next week, or we'll meet with a financial advisor next year, or we'll do this. And next thing you know, you're 65 or you're 70 or you're 75, and we never really did the planning we could have done ahead of time. So it's always important to go ahead and make that phone call. And if you enjoyed the radio show and you're liking mine and Ron today, go ahead and give us a call. And I'd love to sit down and spend an hour with you if you're getting close to retirement or just started, and let's see if we're a good fit for our firm to be the one to help transition you to and through retirement.
888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. That's your number to call if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan Sadler. He's not going to put you off on anybody else. He's the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Would love to have the opportunity to talk with you. And listen, if you're getting ready to retire, it's probably more than likely going to be the only time you do it. But at Regary Financial, they have done it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times for their clients, and they can certainly be of service to you as well. You can get a conversation going that's not going to cost you anything at all and not going to carry with it any kind of obligation. Your number to call to make that happen is 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. When we come back, we're going to give you some other opportunities to connect with Logan Sadler. In addition to the radio show here, we'll be back with more in a moment. This is the Financial Beat.
You're listening to The Financial Beat, striking the right chords in your financial plan.
Welcome back to more of the Financial Beat. I'm Ron Stutz with Logan Sadler. Logan has this radio show every single week, and if you'd like to have an opportunity to have a conversation with him one-on-one, then all you have to do is call this number, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Leave a message with your name and phone number, and you'll get a call back, and then you can have a discovery meeting with Logan, 888-823-PLAN. It's free. There's no obligation involved at all. But another way that you can get lots of good information is by listening to the podcasts that Logan has. And, if you miss a show, or even if you've missed part of this show, you can go and listen to the podcast. And in addition to that, there are YouTube videos out there that Logan has expertly prepared for you on a variety of topics. And Logan, how do folks access all that good information?
Yeah, Ron, great point. And first off, I wanted to say thank you to all of you guys out there that have been showing support to the YouTube channel and the podcast. We've seen some great numbers growing over the last few months, and we appreciate that. So those of you that haven't yet, you can go ahead and click over to podcast and download, type in the Financial Beat, wherever that is you download podcasts. Might be Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, any of those platforms. There's over 100 episodes now recorded and put on there. And like I always say, of 100 of them, one of them is bound to pertain to you and give you some tips and insight. And as well as you can head over to YouTube and type in the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler as well. And again, there's a lot of different videos on there on how to optimize Social Security, how to understand retirement risk, how much should you have saved by age 60 for retirement, right? A lot of those fun videos that a lot of you guys are asking questions on, we're able to jump over to the YouTube platform and spend a little bit more time answering those specific topics. So again, head over there, click subscribe, like, and follow along, and we appreciate the support.
Listen, and I realize I'm biased, but Logan does a great job in those YouTube videos, so you really should check them out. You owe it to yourself. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call. Again, if you want to call the office instead of a time to have a conversation one-on-one. Got a little history for you. I don't know how many people in our audience will remember this. I'm guessing a lot of them. 30 years ago, May 20th, 1993, 80 million people watched the finale of Cheers on NBC. Wow, that was a great show.
It is, yeah. It's still like, that, like Seinfeld, you got like The Friends. I mean, there's some other ones I'm missing in there, like Home Improvement, or, a lot of these different shows that have kind of become like, they're still, I don't want to say as popular as ever, but they're still very, very well watched, I would say, right around the world.
Yeah, and they're out there, and you can easily access them, on a streaming channel or whatever if you do that at home. And one thing that we've been binge watching a lot lately was Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
Hilarious. Gosh.
Isn't that funny? What did we ever do before binge watching, right? You used to have to watch an episode every week when they came out, but now it's like, I won't even watch a show unless there's 2 or 3 seasons of it out already so I can watch it, right?
Yeah, that would be so frustrating. You have to wait another year, but another week. But I do remember that,
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago.
It wasn't. Hey, let's talk about different types of risk. We talked about risk a lot in one of our earlier segments here, and most people don't realize how many different types of risk they're facing in their financial planning. So I thought maybe today we could break down a few of those risks and how to address them. First of all, there is something called market risk. How do you explain that one, and how do you address it?
Yeah, great point. So for those of you out there, I mean, it sounds pretty basic, right? A lot of you probably know what this is, but some of us might not. So let's dive into it. So it's important to understand what market risk is. So many people hear the word risk, right? There's many of different types. So one of the things with market risk is obviously if your accounts go down due to the market, right? So a lot of you retiring might have $100,000 and maybe it's directly in the stock market. You might have $2 million, right, directly in the stock market, whatever the amount is. The biggest risk, obviously, is that we know that unfortunately markets don't always just go up, right? They obviously can go down too. So it's important to understand that, too much risk at the wrong time due to the market can be a very crucial and very, negatively impact the portfolio and the overall plan. So understanding that while you're invested in the markets, which I think for many of us out there can be a great solution and tool for us to use, but unfortunately too much in the market, maybe even at the wrong time, can just be very, very catastrophic to the portfolio. And there's a lot of, like I was talking about earlier in the show, lots of different research and tools that we use with our clients where we could show them, hey, bad returns at the wrong time or too much risk at the wrong time of your plan can be, very devastating to the overall outcome of the plan. So understanding that when you're investing for retirement, you don't want to do it like you're 30 years old, right? A lot of the times we should be scaling back risk, and a lot of that means scaling back market risk. There's many different risks that we're probably going to talk about here today, but market risk for a lot of you out there is one of the biggest ones out there, and there's a lot of different ways to shield yourself from that. Like I talk about all the time, we use a lot of different things like CDs, right? Treasuries, fixed annuities, which pay like a guaranteed interest rate, fixed index annuities, which can have some pretty good upsides to the market, and a lot of them can shield you from any of the downsides of the market and also provide some cash flow. You got index universal life insurance can be a great one. You have, real estate investments. You have REITs. You have structured notes. There's a lot of different things we could do to, again, try to shield some of that market risk that we might be experiencing, as well as, there's bonds and other things we could use as well. But just understanding that, you need to understand where you're at overall and what type of market risk exposure you have. And that's one of the things we do with all of our clients that come on board. We run what's called a Riskalyze report, and we'll show them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you have $2 million, you have $300,000, whatever the amount is, and here's what we're looking to do with the plan. But if we stayed as is, here's what could potentially happen to that portfolio if we experienced a bad market like back in 2008 when we had that last big crash. So understanding how exposed you are to market risk, and then also understanding what could you be doing to shield yourself from it, depending on where you're at in your planning cycle or planning journey, can be very important.
Another thing to be concerned about here is interest rate risk, and a lot of people don't really understand how rising interest rates, which is something we've experienced very recently here, can affect them. So explain that one if you would.
Well, like a lot of people go, well, if I haven't bought a house, I mean, I'm not really, I don't have to worry about interest rate risk, right?
Yeah.
And I go, well, do you have a 401k, or do you have an IRA, or do you have any stocks or bonds you buy in the market? And a lot of them will go, well, yeah, I do, right? And so that's where interest rate risk can also be very dangerous because, like you were saying, Ron, 2022 was a great example where, as we know, rates went up very, very fast in a short amount of time. And what did that do to bonds, right? Typically, bonds don't move the same cycles as interest rates. So if interest rates are going up, typically bonds are going down. So it's very important to understand that a lot of you last year were moving money from the market because it probably wasn't doing very well, and you were moving money into bonds, and then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, those weren't doing well either. Why are my bonds down 10 or 15%? And that's because it's interest rate risk. So you need to make sure, while building out the plan, there's all these different types of risks to look at. And every investment, like I always say, Ron, every investment has a pro and a con, right? Mm-hmm. Every investment has a risk. Every investment has a trade-off. And that's one thing you got to look at with some of those interest rate sensitive investments like bonds.
There's good news and bad news in every one of those situations.
Good news and bad news.
Yeah. There's something else that a lot of people don't really take into account. If you're not planning for inflation to affect your portfolio in the future, you're making a real mistake. And there is inflation risk as well.
Yeah, I mean, for many people out there that are relying on maybe Social Security and pensions for their retirement income, inflation could be a very problematic, right? Because their income streams aren't going to keep up with the buying power they need. Now, Social Security the last few years has done a pretty good job of trying to increase it. But I was talking with a client the other day, last year they did that big raise in that, that 8% category of Social Security going up. Yeah. But the retirement home she lived in went up 12%, right?
Yeah,
so,
really?
It was still a good bump, but hey, she's still a little short in the pockets, right? So it's important to understand while you're looking at your retirement plan, $40,000 a year of income might be sufficient for you now. But guess what? In a couple of years, you might need $50,000 and you might need $60,000, right? So it's going to continuously be a problem throughout the decades of your retirement because these always go in waves. We always have higher inflation some years than we do other years. And the most important part is to understand how your assets are affected by inflation, right? So making sure that you don't have too much in cash. Again, having cash is great, but we don't want to have too much in cash. Understanding how to help hedge against our inflation so that way our portfolio isn't going down more and more each year, not just due to the market, but also inflation.
You're listening to The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. Hope you're having a good day out there in Southern California, and I hope you will make a phone call to 888-823-PLAN. You can get a one-on-one conversation with Logan Sadler. It's not going to cost you anything at all. 888-823-PLAN. We're talking about various types of risk, and there is something else that ought to be considered very strongly, and that is tax rate risk. We have talked so many times on this show before, Logan, about how taxes are almost assuredly going to be higher in the future.
Yeah, many people out there are just, we just don't understand a lot about taxes, which, hey, you're not alone, right? Taxes can be very confusing for a lot of us. But while looking at, when I'm dealing with a lot of clients, especially our higher net worth clients, if you have $500,000 to $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, maybe even more, and it's in tax deferred investments, a lot of us are just not aware of what's coming down the road, right? We always thought, I'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. That's what everyone always told me. When I retire, I'll be in a lower tax bracket, so I'm going to not pay taxes now. I'll put off these taxes, right? And I'll pay them in retirement at a lower rate. So maybe I'm in the 22% tax bracket now, but when I retire, I might go down to the 12%, right? Or maybe I'm in the 32% right now, and I might go down to the 12%. But unfortunately, with a lot of us, accruing such large amounts of money into our tax-deferred investments, and like you said, Ron, with tax rates probably going to go up over at least the next decade, right? it's one of those things where tax rate risk is one of the most important things coming up that a lot of us aren't planning for. And that's one thing I always tell people when we're working on a plan. We need to look at, should we be doing some Roth conversions? Should we be contributing to Roth 401ks or IRAs? What could we be doing now to maybe insulate ourselves for the next 5 to 10 years? And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't look at when they're looking at investments and planning. They look at right now, what sexy index fund do I have, or do I have an annuity, or do I have life insurance? And all that stuff's, again, very important. But understanding how are we insulating ourselves, or can we insulate ourselves from tax rates going up and maybe some of the future taxes we might pay at a higher rate down the road? Is there any legwork we could do now to start hedging that?
In addition to market risk and interest rate risk, inflation risk and tax rate risk, there's one thing that kind of coordinates all of those things together, and that is longevity risk. The longer you live, and people are definitely living longer these days, the more problems you might have because of inflation and all those other things that we just talked about.
Yeah, longevity risk, like you said, it's basically like a multiplier of all those other ones, right? We use a lot of planning software when I'm with a client, right, Ron? I'll show them, hey, if you retired at age 60 and you live till age 80, here's kind of what your plan, here's what your retirement roadmap could look like, right? And then it shows maybe they have a 90% success rate, meaning this is going to turn out very, very beautifully, right? But then you extend that from 80 to 90, and maybe it drops it down. Maybe it drops it down from those 90s down to maybe in the 80s, right? Maybe even in the 70s. And so a lot of us don't understand the longer we live, it multiplies all of these other risks, right? Like tax rates, right? The longer we live, maybe the more taxes we're going to pay on it, because taxes might have gone higher and higher.
Yep.
Inflation, right? Inflation might have gone higher and higher. The longer you live, that $1 million you had saved might buy less and less. So it's just so important to understand how all of these risks can fit into your retirement plan, and understanding, making sure you have a comprehensive plan that's going to be built to last the next 20 or 30 years. Because again, as what gets you to retirement won't always get you through retirement. And, Ron, a lot of us, we always talk about, hey, Logan, what do you guys talk about at the discovery meeting, or why should I come in for a discovery meeting? Well, number one, we're going to talk about these 5 risks in the first meeting there, basically, and just kind of talk about your overall plan. But I always say it's basically 3 simple steps, Ron. At the discovery meeting is where you come in. We're going to talk about, who you are, what you and your family, what do you do for a living, and what are you really looking for out of a financial advisor, right? Number 2, we're going to discuss what goals do you have in your retirement? How do you envision a retirement? Do you plan to be very active? Are you going to work forever? What is your goals there? Also, what concerns do we have? Are we worried about nursing home? Are we worried about taxes or market risk? And really kind of get that customized feel for what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then that third and most important thing, we discuss a solution, right? We're going to develop a strategy and really start kind of building the blueprint of what we need to go over at the next meeting, and making sure that that blueprint is customized to each individual client that comes in, and making sure that their plan fits their needs. And it's not just some cookie cutter portfolio, and making sure we've understood, what types of risks are in our retirement plan. What can we do now to better prepare ourselves for the next 20 or 30 years. So give us a call. I definitely think if you're approaching retirement or just in retirement, and again, you might have $300,000, you might have $4 million, and I think we could definitely provide a lot of value by just coming in and taking that first step.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-7526. Your number to call for Brigari Financial. Convenient offices in Redlands and also Hemet. And you can start with a phone call if you like, or maybe a Zoom connection, or maybe you might want to stroll into one of those convenient offices and have a conversation. And when you do talk, you're going to talk with Logan Sadler, the VP and Chief Investment Officer. And the number to call, again, is 888-823-PLAN. There's another risk out there, and that is, the longer you live, a lot of people are going to risk having to lie awake at night, worried about outliving their money. You don't want that. Logan Sadler can make sure you don't have to experience that. You need a plan. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler, and we'll have more coming up in just a moment. You're listening to The Financial Beat.
At the end of the day, no one truly understands your financial wants and desires better than you. That's why it's important to have financial independence. This means you can work when you want, you know exactly where your income is coming from, and most importantly, your finances are stable. If this sounds like something you want, well, text the word advice to the number 21000. And Logan Sadler and his team at Brigari Financial can provide you with their free guide on achieving financial independence. The free guide will show you how to create an action plan for getting to where you want to be. It'll explain how to calculate a financial independence goal. And it'll define what an ICE egg is and why it's so important. Download it now by texting the word advice to the number 21,000. Again, text the word advice to the number 21,000 to gain your financial independence today.
It's getting to know you time.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. My name's Ryan Stutz, and if you'd like to call Logan's office, it's 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Logan, just so folks can get to know you a little bit better, what's your favorite meal? Let's get down to basics here. What's your favorite meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
You know what? This is a crazy answer, but it depends on what day of the week it is. It really, it's funny. On weekends, I really enjoy going out to a really good lunch.
Yeah.
During the week, we're always kind of have a lot of work to do here for a lot of different reasons at our office. So I don't typically get a real great lunch every day.
Yeah.
But on the weekends, I really enjoy a good lunch where you can go out and have a nice, sandwich, pizza, something good. During the week, I don't eat a lot of breakfast. And like I said, I'm always kind of rushing with lunch. So I enjoy dinner more during the week. So I'm giving you two answers there. I'd say dinner and lunch.
Well, guess what? I agree with you 100%, everything you just said.
Well, there you go. That's awesome.
Works the same way at my house. Dinner is much more important.
It is. It's the biggest meal of the day for myself and always the one I look forward to probably the most.
Right. You're listening to the Financial Beat. Now you know Logan Sadler a little better. We'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, 4.
When musicians are performing, they typically need someone to count them into each song. Without that count in, the musicians might be out of sync and the song could fall apart. It's similar to your financial plan. All of your investments must be in sync, working towards your financial goals. Keep listening to the Financial Beat and learn how to make sure that your investments are playing together perfectly.
Welcome back to more of the Financial Beat. Logan Sadler is on the radio. Go tell everybody you know. Logan's number, if you'd like to get in touch with Regary Financial and arrange to have a discovery meeting, that is kind of a getting to know you opportunity. The number to call is 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-7526. Logan Sadler will be happy to sit down and talk with you about your individual financial situation, and it won't cost you anything. There's no obligation involved at all. You can walk away at the end and never come back. I don't think you're going to do that, but that's your option. 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN for Regary Financial, with terrific partnerships with everybody having to do anything with your money, including Medicare specialists, mortgage lenders, real estate agents, attorneys, CPAs, you name it. Logan Sadler and the folks at Regary Financial are well connected, and you get comprehensive service at Regary Financial. Hey, Logan, let's go to the mailbag. We have some great questions here today. First one is from Margaret in Fontana. Margaret says, I'm not very interested in trying to leave a fortune for my kids. They're all doing just fine and probably making more than I ever made. If there's anything left, they can have it, but if there's nothing left, I'm not worried about it. Is that a wrong way to think?
No, it's not, right? Believe it or not, I always say it's your money, right? I mean, it was your livelihood, it was your blood, sweat, and tears that you probably poured into that to save all that money. So no, I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell people your retirement plan can be whatever you want it to be, right? That's the nice part is you still get to pick, right? You get to make it what you want. And I have had clients where they say, hey, Logan, I got $500,000, I got $1 million, or whatever the amount is, and guess what? Kids are just fine. I want to go ahead and make sure this is going to be everything I needed to make in retirement, right? Yeah. But I always say there's a very important balance there, right? Because I saw one client where they said, I don't want to leave anything to the kids, but they just started, I don't want to say blowing money, but blowing money, right? They were unnecessarily spending, really off budget. And again, the whole point was, well, I don't want to leave any money behind the kids, but you still want to have money to last the rest of your lifetime, right? So It's important to understand the balance there and making sure everything still fits into the plan. Unfortunately, Ron, as we always talk about, that would be very easy to do if we knew exactly when we were going to pass away, right? Then we could say, I could spend X amount because I'm dying in 170 days, right? Or I'm dying in 5 years. But it's important to balance that out. But no, I mean, Margaret, to answer your question very direct, no, we have a lot of clients where obviously their goal is to maybe leave some money behind to kids or charities or whatever the case is. And I have a lot of clients where they say, I'd like to use as much as I can and make it last as long as I can, but I'd like to use it for my lifetime. And whatever's left, sure, if there's some left, it goes to the kids. But I think it's important to understand we got to get a plan together to where that's going to work out because, again, we still want it to last the rest of your lifetime.
Slide on into the grave and have your last check to the undertaker bounce.
That'd be the way to do it, right?
Our next question in the mailbag is from Robert in, let's see, where is he? Paris. And Robert's in Paris, and he says, if I'm retiring in 2025, should I just have my 401k money invested in the 2025 target date fund? Seems a little too simple, but that's what the fund is supposed to do for me, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would think, right? But no, great question, Robert. But no, not a bad question because a lot of us think that way, and that's what target date funds were basically kind of designed for. Is a lot of us out there that maybe don't work with an advisor or maybe we don't know a whole lot about investments. It is a good way to get that kind of cookie cutter approach where as you get older, maybe it shifts more and more money from maybe more risky investments to maybe more conservative investments. The biggest problem I'm seeing with this, Robert, is we were talking about, I think, on the last segment where we were talking about interest rate risk, right? So meaning as interest rates went up, bond prices are typically going down. Now, bonds have had a historically bad, half a decade or maybe even a decade. And so what happens, Robert, is basically what they're doing is they're taking more of your money. So let's say you had, $100,000 in your 401k. Every year you get closer to 2025, they're moving more and more money into bonds. Well, the problem is, bonds have been extremely unstable. And so they're typically the returns on those 2025 funds have not been, great. And so I always tell people if you're over the age of 59 and a half, which it sounds like you're probably pretty close or already there because you're retiring in 2025, I would highly recommend if you're over the age of 59 and a half, or maybe even if you have an old 401k, or maybe your old employer, definitely worth, giving us a call or an advisor a call and kind of going through what options are out there because typically you can get a lot more customized on using things like treasuries or CDs or annuities or other types of investments that might be able to be a little bit more customized and a little bit better used than just those target date funds. And again, not saying they're bad, but a lot of the times there could be a lot more customization that could really enhance the potential outcome of the overall plan. But you're not thinking too crazy there. But I definitely would say if anybody out there is listening to this that is getting close to retiring in the next year or two, or maybe just retired, and you have that old 401k or a current 401k, and you're maybe in a target date fund, definitely give us a call and let me kind of show you some insight of what I think could maybe be done a little bit differently to, again, maybe enhance the overall outcome.
Robert, it sounds like a follow-up conversation could be in order, and the number to call to make that happen is 888-823-PLAN. Call Logan Sadler today. Don't procrastinate. Procrastination, not your friend. One more question today. Logan is from Walt in Loma Linda, and Walt says, I'm 58 and was just informed by my company that I'll be laid off in 60 days. I'll be able to stay on the company health insurance plan for a year and will be given a 6-month severance package. I have the option of taking my pension as a monthly income or a lump sum. How do I decide on the pension question, and what else do I need to think about as I plan my steps moving forward?
Yeah, well, Walt, thanks for writing in. Thanks for listening. Obviously, a tough little situation you're going through right here, a tough time period. So, our thoughts are with you there. I think the biggest thing I always tell people, and unfortunately I do have a lot of experience going through very similar situations like this with a lot of our clients. And so one thing I always tell people is it's important to take a deep breath, right, and kind of get your mind focused a little bit and as focused as you can. And there's a lot of big decisions you got to make, right? And I wouldn't say rush into any of them. But one thing you want to do is you talked about the pension. I would really kind of look at, what are you wanting out of that pension? You could take that money and put it in the stock market, get a good return on it potentially over time, have some risk to it, and it could do pretty well. You have annuities that maybe you could do the same thing like a pension and move that money over to an annuity. It could pay you out a lifetime income just like the pension would, maybe around the same, maybe even more. But if you passed away, whatever's left in there goes to the beneficiaries. So that could be a really big benefit there. Or, maybe taking the pension. So I think one of the most important things with the pension, I always say, is we don't know the answer until we sit down, see what your goals, what your hopes are, what your comfortability is, and then we can start running the numbers and really breaking down what the best choice to do. I've seen some clients where it makes a lot of sense to take the pension. It's just a great way to go. I've seen some where it makes zero sense, right? You can do a lot better on your own. Maybe you have kids and things like that. You want to use the money as a legacy play. So I think it's super, super important to understand all the ins and outs of how that works. And there's a lot of other decisions, like you said. There's a lot of planning topics that need to be had. Are we going back to work, right? What, do we have a 401k? All these other things that are looking at what do you want in retirement? How much income are you losing, income replacement, all of that stuff. So, Social Security might need to be factored in down the road too, when to take that. So you got a lot you kind of got to go through. But what I always say is, let's sit down, let's go one thing at a time, and let's really look at what's the best option for you and your family, and then let's take the best course of action.
And the key is that everybody's situation is different. There's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to retirement planning. Your situation is different. Mine is unique. Logan's is unique. And, it takes a one-on-one plan tailored specifically to your needs. And Logan Sadler will be glad to sit down and talk with you about that. You can have a discovery meeting that's not going to cost you a penny by calling 888-823-PLAN. Call Regary Financial today. Leave a message with your name and phone number, and you get a call back, and then you can have your conversation with Logan very soon. 888-823-PLAN. No cost for this and no obligation attached to it at all. 888-823-PLAN. You can find out more about Logan Sadler and the good folks at Regary Financial by going to financialbeatradio.com, financialbeatradio.com. And we certainly invite you to listen to those podcasts if there were shows in the past that you missed, or certainly go and check out the YouTube videos. A lot of good information there. But we certainly hope that you will join us again next time for the next edition of the Financial Beat. Logan, it's been fun today.
Yeah, Ron, I always appreciate your time, me and you hanging out here. I always, as I say almost all the time, right? It's one of my favorite days of the week here is to sit down, talk some finance, maybe joke around a little bit and talk about some strategies. So
yeah.
I appreciate you being here, and I also appreciate all the listeners out there who stop by weekly, or maybe it's your first time stopping by and hopefully like the show. Maybe you'll catch it next week, or maybe even head over to the podcast or the YouTube channel, The Financial Beat, to follow along for more info.
Once again, we hope you will be here next week, but in the meantime, the number, one more time, 888-823-PLAN. Join us again next time for the next edition of the Financial Beat.
Regary Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. and BD Financial Group, Inc. are separate and independent entities. The information provided in this presentation is presented for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, tax, or legal advice, nor does it constitute an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any securities.